Hello everyone, I am Prankur Gupta and today we are going to understand 2D arrays in Java. Now 2D arrays are similar to 1D array as it is a collection of homogeneous data elements. But here the elements are present in 2D form. I mean our elements, or you can say our memory locations, are present in matrix form. In matrix form we know that if we want to know search any element in matrix, if we want to know any element, then we must know its row number and its column number. That is how we can access any element. Similar is the case here. If we want to denote our any element in 2D matrix, in 2D arrays, then we must know its row and column number. So here basically two indexes will be used to represent our any element. As in 1D array we have seen that we were using only one index to represent our any element, as we were talking about a of 0, so it was representing our first element. Okay, but here we will use two indexes as a of 0. So here if we want to access any element, there will be two indexes. Okay, now let us see how we can declare, how we can give memory, and how we can perform some other operations on 2D arrays. Now first of all, to declare our array, we must specify the type. Now see, it is similar to the 1D array that it must have some type, and it should have same corresponding elements in this 2D array. I mean, if we are specifying here int, then this array must contain all the elements of int type. If we are specifying string, then this array must contain all the elements of string type. Okay, because it is a collection of homogeneous data elements. Now after that we have to specify the variable name. Now what is this variable name? Basically, as we have seen in 1D array also, this variable name is basically a reference which will point to some type specified here. It means that if we are creating our 2D array of int type, then this reference will point to the object of int type which is in heap memory. Okay, so we have also seen that in our one-dimensional array. Now here we are using two parentheses. Why two parentheses? Because each element will be denoted by two indexes. So we can also declare it like this, and we can also declare it like this and like this also. Okay, now there are three ways to declare a 2D array. Now here I am using the example of int array. Here I have declared an int array. Now in memory a will be created which by default will have null, because all the reference data types by default have null, and array is a reference data type. So a will be created in memory which will point to nothing, so it will have null value. And after the creation, after giving memory to this array, it will start pointing to some, it will point to some integer type object which is present in heap memory. Let us see how. Actually, when we give memory to this our 2D array, then the statement will be look like this. Now here we are instead of using one parenthesis as we have seen in 1D array, we are using two parentheses and we are giving two values. These are basically representing the size of our array, 2D array. Now this first parenthesis is representing the number of rows in our array, and the second parenthesis is representing the number of columns in our array. So basically if there are 3 rows and 3 columns, okay, so it will look like this. Now the indexes is started from 0, and this is representing our 2D array, and by default all the rows and columns have zeros value. Why zeros? Because it is an integer type 2D array. So we know that integers by default have 0 value, so that is why it is initialized automatically with 0 values. Okay, now there is one more thing, that we can also declare and give memory to 2D array in just a single statement like this. I have just combined these two statements here, and it is representing our 2D array. It will give memory to this block. Okay, now the only thing that is left is to populate this array. Populate means to give values from user or by programmer. Okay, now the only thing is left to populate this array. But before telling you how to populate this array, let me tell you that how it is representing in memory. Basically it is easy to see here in 2D matrix, but actually it is in memory, it is represented like this. What does it mean? Let us see that. Now here I have told you that a reference will be created in stack which has some address of array. Actually 2D array is an array of arrays. So basically here a reference is pointing to an array which is further pointing to some more arrays. So basically 2D array is an array of arrays. Now what is this array? the data elements are containing here. I mean these rows are here. Now what is this one array? Actually this array is representing us the giving us the address of these rows. Now to reach these rows we need to know their addresses. The addresses of these rows are containing in these arrays. The first row address is containing in this 0th element. The second row address is containing in this first element, second element, and the third row address is present at this third element. Okay, so basically this array contains the addresses of all rows. Okay, now to access these rows we must know their addresses. So that is how we the 2D arrays can be represented in memory. Now let us see how we can populate our 2D array. Now to populate means how to give elements, how to give user defined values to our 2D elements. Now here first I have created an 2D array, and after that I am basically using two indexes. You can see here, first is for row and second is for column. The first 0 is representing row number and second 0 is representing column number. So basically our first element have indexing of 0 of 0. As you can see here also, the first element have indexing of 0 and 0. So this is representing our first element and we are giving value 10 to it. Okay, after that, now to give the value to our second element of first row, then I am using index 0 and 1. Now it is representing first row and second column, so I am giving value 20 to it. In this way, I will keep on doing this and fill my all elements. It is one way to populate an 2D array. Now another way to populate our 2D array is from taking input from user. Now user, it is someday it is requirement, it will be requirement that can be requirement that we want input from user. Now for that purpose what I am doing, basically I am using br.readline to input string from user, and I am converting it into integer. Why integer? Because my 2D array is of int type, so I need integer to put in the memory location of my 2D array. So basically I am using two loops here. In 1D array we were using one loop because our array was in one dimensional form. So but here we need two loops. Okay, now I have first loop is going from 0 to a dot length. This a dot length, now in one dimensional we came to know that a dot length means it is showing us the number of elements in our array, but here a dot length is basically telling us the number of rows in our array. Okay, in 2D array a dot length is giving us the number of rows in our array. Okay, so the value of I will become 0, so it will first fill our first row, and inside this first row it will fill all the columns which are 0, 1 and 2. And how these columns will be filled? Using this second for loop. Now first for loop is for rows and second for loop is for columns. For the value of I is equals to 0, it will come inside and the value of j will become 0. J is representing column and I is representing row. So basically a of I dot length is representing the length of this particular element. What is actually a dot length is basically representing these rows. Okay, and what are columns? These are our columns. As you can see, these are columns. So basically it is representing our columns. So basically a of I dot length is basically the length of this array, and if the value of I is 0, then this will represent this first row, and if the value of I is 1, then it will represent this row, and if the value of I is 2, then it will represent this row. Okay, so in this way we will keep on doing this until our all elements will be filled. Now how to traverse a 2D array? To traverse a 2D array we are again applying two loops, and after inside that loop, instead of getting input from user, I am just printing out all the elements a of I of j, because I is representing my row and j is representing my column number. So that is why I am using this statement to print all the elements. Okay, now let us see guys what is jagged array. Now guys, jagged array is basically, we have seen in my previous example that we can have same number of columns in all rows. I mean, if first I have defined that we are giving memory here 3 by 3. So basically if I have 3 rows, then all rows will have same number of columns. First row is having 3 columns, second row is having 3 columns, and third row is also having 3 columns. But here what we can do, we can basically dynamically change the number of columns in each row. If I want 2 columns in my first row, then I can do it. If I want 3 columns in my second row, I can do it. So basically it is giving us a privilege to differentiate the, or you can say change the number of columns in each row. So basically here you can see I am dynamically creating a 2D array in which in first row I am giving 3 columns, in second row I am giving 4 columns. It can also be created like this. Here first what I am doing, basically we can also create 2D array like this by just defining a row. I mean it is representing that it will have 3 rows, but it is no, but the parenthesis of column is empty, so we can define it in other statement. Here a of representing is first row, so basically a of 0 is equals to new int of 3. It is actually, I have already told you 2D array is an array of arrays. So basically it is first array, 0 1 and 2 is the first array which is representing rows, and further inside that we are creating more arrays to fill our columns. So basically first row will have 3 columns, second row will have 1 column, and third row will have 6 columns. That is how we can change the number of columns for each row. Okay guys, this is known as jagged array, in which we can have different columns in different rows. Okay, because 2D array is an array of arrays, that is why this array is representing our number of rows, and inside that we are defining some more arrays to define our columns. Okay, I hope you get the clear idea guys how 2D array works. If you guys like my video, don't forget to follow and share this video. This is my Unacademy profile link. Thank you guys.